Hi everyone. I went to an auction this past Saturday and I figured I would show off all of my ill-gotten gains. I got pretty good deals, even though it was a pretty well-attended auction. And one of the first things I got was this big box of brass. I went ahead and put some sizes on here so you got an idea of what I've got. I've got a longer piece and a shorter piece of 1.5" or 38 millimeter diameter brass. Everything's brass on the inside. This big chunk is 2" or 50 millimeter. I've got some 1" here. I've got some 3/4, so that's 25 and 20 millimeters respectively. 1/2" or about 12 millimeters. This piece of tubing, it's pretty thin walled. This is 1.5" outer diameter, again 38 millimeters, and the wall thickness is just shy of a millimeter. Got this piece of 1/2" by 1/4 or 12 by 6 millimeter, and then a bunch of smaller pieces, some pieces of sheet metal, and this looks like the remnants of a hotel bell maybe. And there's some smaller pieces in here that are 1/4" or 3/16, and some tiny little threaded pieces and discs down there. Overall, some pretty decent stock for not too much money. The second thing I got was one of these little pneumatic mini sanders, mini belt sanders. If you've never used one of these, they are really fantastic for deburring the edges of plate. I will say, if you buy one of these belts break very, very easily, so you don't want to put a ton of pressure on them, otherwise you're going to go through the belts pretty fast. I got this large hydraulic cylinder as well, and I didn't want to particularly put that on my kitchen table to show it off. This is about 1.5" diameter on the shaft, maybe somewhere in the 3.5 to 4" range on the inside of the bore. This will be the subject of a future video because I'll take this apart and actually show how to rebuild a hydraulic cylinder. I may have to make a new shaft. This is pretty scarred up. We'll just have to see. I don't actually know what this came off of, but it was in a big trailer that basically just had scrap metal, and nobody bid on it, and I got it for $1. I have a blacksmith friend, and he was there at the auction with me too, so he's like, man, that'd be perfect for a forging press. You should go ahead and get it. So I did, and one of these days I'm sure I'll get to building a forging press with it after I find all the other crap that I need. I got these 3 V-blocks for $20 a piece. They were one of the more expensive things that I got. So I've got 1 large one and 2 small ones that are hopefully matched anyway. They're all brown and sharp, and as a bonus to keep the clamps in place, they put the punches there as well as the this little chuck key, so I got those for free. I got all 3 of these clamps for $10, and I think that's a pretty good steal. I've got a pair of Lufkin parallel clamps, and you can never have too many of those. These are pretty easy to make as well. I'm going to do a build video pretty soon in the future on making some of these guys, maybe a couple of different sizes. And then you've got this is the Can't Twist style clamp. This is actually made by Enco. It's a little on the older side. It's made in Korea rather than China, so it seems to be a little bit better quality than some of the import ones that I've seen. These are pretty fantastic, especially for welding and things like that. I got this nice set of drills made in the USA, and these have been modified for drilling copper and brass, which are grabby materials. And I did an earlier video on how to modify drills like this, and you can see there's a flat ground right on the cutting lip there, and that's because as it's breaking through with a sharp cutting edge, it will want to suddenly screw into the work up the flutes, and especially thinner materials like sheet metal. So if you put this flat on the edge when you're drilling through copper and brass and bronze too, it'll keep it from grabbing and tearing out of the chuck, and it's a lot safer to drill that way. Also came with this little plastic drill gauge, which I will almost certainly give to someone who needs it. And I'm missing the 1/8 inch drill, but those are easy to come by, so that shouldn't be too hard to replace. I didn't actually intend on bidding on these, but nobody else bid on them, so I went ahead and raised my hand and I got all 3 of them for $10. We've got some Dremel type bits, some little rotary burrs with 1/8 inch shanks, and they're in a variety of shapes and sizes here. I've got a set of 4 pin vices, nothing super special here, made in India, they're SPI brand, but these are used for holding relatively small objects, or you can put a drill in them and sort of drill out a hole by hand on softer materials. And then these are small hole gauges, and they're Lufkins, but these work an awful lot like telescoping gauges. You have a screw back here that will pull on a little wedge, and it separates the 2 halves of the gauge. And in use, you would move it in and out of the hole until you feel it drag on the sides, and then you'd pull it out and you'd measure across it with a micrometer, just like you would a telescoping gauge. This is the half ball type, so you can get a little closer to the bottom of a hole or into a shallower hole. They have a full ball type that you can really only use in relatively deep holes. These are super handy to have. I don't use mine a ton, but they're fantastic for measuring smaller holes, and they're a lot more user-friendly than carrying your entire tray of gauge pins around trying to measure the hole diameters. This set of angle plates is one of the things that I had my eye on the whole day. I really wanted these, and I managed to get them for 20 bucks. They're just a set of cheap imported ones, but they've got all these holes that have been added to them, and that's pretty fantastic if you want to put a fence on the side of your angle plate to make setups a little bit easier to get things nice and square. Of course, you can use them to clamp parts to the angle plates as well, or build a fixture or whatever. The possibilities are pretty endless, and really you can never have too many angle plates sitting around. I walked away from this auction with a load of books, and you'll see them all. I'll talk a little bit about each one of them. But these 2, every machinist should have copies of these in their bookshelf. Of course, you've got Machinery's Handbook. I think that doesn't really need any introductions. It's basically the machinist's Bible. And then the American Machinist Handbook by Colvin and Stanley. This one happens to be the 1940 edition. It's a lot like Machinery's Handbook. It's got a lot of charts and tables for threads and fits and things like that in it. Just like Machinery's Handbook, it's one of those things that it's got stuff in there you never knew you needed. I got these for $20 a piece, which is maybe a little on the high side, but I didn't mind paying that much. I got each of these stacks for $6 a piece, and they just did a choice stack. They had multiple stacks of books there on the table, and when the bidding got up to $6, they just let you take whichever stacks you wanted. So on this one, this is a neat book, and I believe it's still in print. This is an older edition, but the Machinist Ready reference, and it's got a lot of the same stuff as Machinery's Handbook. You've got stuff on drill geometry, there's math tables, tapers, of course screw threads, things like that. Apparently from 2004. Bits about carbide inserts from Kennametal there. I'm sure they've got other things in there. So fantastic little thing for the toolbox. This book was just in the stack. It's a handbook of chemistry and physics. I'm not going to keep that, I'm sure. And then Modern Machine Shop. I haven't actually looked through this, so I'm not sure what's in it. 1988. So I'm guessing it's not super up to date. It seems to be CNC related. So who knows, I'll keep it around just because. Over in this stack we've actually got this book is geared more towards engineers, but it's kind of neat because it's got a breakdown of how each type of furnace, blast furnace, the Bessemer furnace, the electric arc furnace, how they all work, and kind of how they're constructed. So, if you ever want to build a furnace in your backyard, maybe you look up this book. But they've got all sorts of the stuff about how steel is rolled, and some heat treatment, tubular steel. There's lots of neat stuff. There's stress strain curves, it looks like, or maybe, no, this is all heat treatment. So it's maybe more towards an engineer, but, hey, I got it for $6, well, $2 really. Here's another one that's more geared towards an engineer, but pretty handy for the machinist as well. Jig and fixture design manual. And there's tons of different charts and stuff in here, talking about different ways that you can hold a workpiece for machining, and different ways that you can guide a tool. There's a lot of engineering details in here, so it's definitely meant more for a tooling engineer, but it's pretty interesting stuff. And this one seems to be more like a machining textbook for a class. It's got everything from hand tools to measuring tools to the actual machinery. So it's a pretty neat little book. I'll keep that around as well. I got this stack for $2.50. I didn't particularly need anything. I've already got a copy of this book, but I was attracted a little bit by this one because I took a test a long time ago, and one of the questions was about the cutting speed for pure molybdenum, and I didn't really know it at the time. So, it just made me remember that test, and I figured I'd go ahead and grab it. Molybdenum is used as an alloying element in a lot of steels, so chromoly steels that are so popular, like 4140 and 4340. Those are primarily alloyed with iron, chromium, and molybdenum. This book is called The Boy Mechanic. It was put out by Popular Mechanics, and they're all just articles from the magazine, and just fun little projects that you could do if you were so inclined. Cool little go-kart maybe. I've got a couple of other Popular Mechanics books, and it might be fun to do with my son one day, who knows. Now these are sure to get me a couple of "you sucks" down in the comments. I got the first, second, and third machinist bedside readers all for $2 a piece. They just threw out all the rest of the books there and got bid up to $2, and I grabbed these three. If you don't know about these books, they're pretty awesome. They've got a lot of projects in them, different tools that you can make. There's little anecdotes and stories and things like that, just tips and tricks. So these are really fantastic books, and they're normally about $22, I think, maybe $25. So I really got a steal on them for getting them for $2 a piece. And that's going to be sitting next to my bedside for the foreseeable future. Overall, not too bad of a haul, and I got it all for $242.50 US. If you don't go to auctions, I highly recommend it. If you're looking for tooling, they're a great place to find some things. Some of the sites I look at are Auction Zip. That's the big one. You can do searches for auctions in your area showing keywords. So I might look for machine tools or machinist or something like that, and try to find industrial auctions in my area. This one is just a consignment auction that happens every spring and fall. So I just went to this, and I happened to get lucky, and there were a bunch of tools there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please feel free to tell me that I suck down in the comment for some of these screaming hot deals that I got. And while you're at it, hit the like button or the subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.